You're live.
Hardy, I hope you have the prayer. Madam Mayor, it's 6:01 and we are live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, June 2nd, regular City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy.
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the invocation led by Commissioner Hardy, followed by the pledge led by the Vice Mayor.
I would like us first to just have a moment of silence for not only the memory of Mr. George Floyd, but for the memory of every person who in this country has lost their life at the hands of someone who they paid with their tax dollars to protect them and keep them safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
The
of the United States of America,
And to
the
the
republic
republic for which it
which
stands,
stands one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay, we're gonna move right into it. We've got a number of items on tonight. First, are there any additions, deletions, and reordering? I saw some coming through.
Madam Mayor, there are the additions. We added the second amendment to the retail lease with Mulligan's and attached the copy of the amendment. And then we attached the resolution. It wasn't quite finished when we had to send everything out. And then we also deleted from this agenda the unfinished business item about the casino tenant leases. In light of everything that's happened, we just need to, staff needs to finalize the amendments. And that's it.
Okay, and that was item,
That's under unfinished business, item A. It's at the bottom of your agenda.
we're gonna delete that. Okay, I'll
Madam
entertain a
Mayor.
motion to accept.
Madam
Yes,
Mayor, my
Commissioner
hand is up.
Robinson?
Yeah, I would like to move that we include an item on tonight's agenda to consider a motion to convene a special meeting to create a task force focused on local resolutions to the systemic racism and injustices that threaten our nation.
second, well,
We haven't even had should we have a discussion about it or create an agenda item before?
Well, I'm making a motion that we put that on the agenda.
Okay, so we've got the items, the one that was moved, the one that was deleted, and the one that Commissioner Robinson just brought up. Okay, and on what agenda, Commissioner Robinson?
Tonight.
Tonight's agenda. Well, we're gonna need some,
It's a
Back up.
brief, it can be a brief decision or a lengthy discussion, however we want to do it.
okay, well, we've got to first accept the agenda with all three items on it. I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
so moved.
Seconded,
That's including,
yours. Mhm.
yes.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
nay.
Nay. Okay, motion fails 3-2. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as the two items that were suggested by the city clerk.
This actually
Well,
is three.
Pardon me? Three items.
Yes.
moved by the city
Yeah,
clerk.
there's three.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Can I ask,
Hold on 1 second. We've got this going for, okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the items that have been presented by the clerk and to add an item. Commissioner Robinson wanted a discussion about a task force. Excuse me, he wanted a discussion about a special meeting to create a task force on the city's response generally to police citizen issues. I can't obviously try to add that to the agenda because it's been rejected. But I do think that we need to have a discussion in this meeting today about these issues and about what we're going to do, how we're going to plan to go forward to ensure that something like that doesn't happen here. With all respect to the deputies here, I think it's incumbent on us to at least have a discussion about that today. And I'm interested in hearing what Commissioner Robinson has to say, and I have some thoughts of my own as well. So that would be my motion, the 3 items on the clerk and an item about a special meeting about community police relations.
Today?
It's a discussion item.
Today.
Yes, that would be today.
Okay. All right, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Well, I was wondering what the rejection, when we rejected the first motion for the agenda, were the votes opposed to the agenda, specifically opposed to the task force or the special meeting?
I don't think they have to answer. I can only speak for myself and to say that I'm comfortable if we're going to have a comprehensive workshop on it and talk about it. I'd like to bring in all parties involved and set it to a date certain that people in our community can be a part of it. But to throw it on an agenda tonight when it's so serious an issue, to have not all parties represented at it, I think that is, not the greatest idea. I appreciate your concern about it. Trust me, it's been a horrific time, and I'd be open to having this on an upcoming agenda or as a workshop itself with members of PBSO here, with members of our community here, to all offer input on it. I think that would be the best forum for it, to throw it in here as a discussion without having all parties involved, that we can actually make some real difference. I would feel comfortable with that.
I think we're having a discussion about a motion without a second, and I would need a second from Herman or someone to have a discussion about this.
Correct.
But
I was trying to clarify for Commissioner Robinson, because we're usually out of order when people ask questions when they're not supposed to ask questions, but I was trying to just give him some understanding of why I would be more comfortable with it that direction. But if you want to make a second, and we'll vote on it like we're supposed to do at this point anyway.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor, say so by saying aye.
Point of
I
order.
just want to,
Point of
Sure.
order, Commissioner Maxwell, what's your point of order?
Isn't this motion essentially the first one, the same as the first one that was offered?
One of them called for a task force, and this one does not call for a task force, but a discussion.
a discussion about a special meeting to be held between now and our next regular meeting. It's literally a discussion about a special meeting. That's all it is. There are really no substantive issues in this item. It's literally a discussion about a special meeting.
It's an agreement to have a meeting.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I may, this is essentially what Commissioner Robinson asked for initially, just rephrased, repackaged.
Okay. So we've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
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 Okay.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion if you want to make it an addendum to that based on what we just discussed, or if you want to just make it as is. Somebody please make a motion for that.
Motion to accept the clerk's agenda as is.
I'll
Do I have a
second. I'll second. it. Can I second, Madam Mayor, with an amendment
Yes.
that Commissioner Robinson bring back in writing an outline of how we'd like to see a workshop conducted in the future on this issue, so we can all prepare for it and make sure we have all the parties, as you requested earlier, at the table.
Point of order.
Hold on one second. You would have to change the original motion to do that. Can you make just an addendum on it, Christie, or you would have to get the original motion maker to agree to it?
It would have to be a friendly amendment that the original motion maker would agree to.
I do.
Point of
Okay.
order.
Yes. As to
Yeah,
what?
so this is a motion about whether to accept the agenda. The condition or the friendly amendment that Commissioner Maxwell added to Commissioner Amoroso's motion does not pertain to what should be on today's agenda. It is essentially a requirement on an individual commissioner that before he bring another item back at a future meeting, he needs to have done X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I don't believe that that's the function of this part of the meeting, whether the other two commissioners agreed with whether we should have a discussion about a special meeting in the future at today's meeting. What Commissioner Robinson brought here and what I attempted to do after I saw what Commissioner Robinson did was about putting an item on this agenda. This is not about putting an item on the agenda. That friendly amendment, it's not what this part of the agenda is about.
Well, that's okay. A friendly amendment is just trying to do something in support of another commissioner to try to help them to reach their goal. But if you prefer not to agree to that, that's okay. We've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Commissioner Robinson?
Well,
It's
I don't
aye
think
or- aye or nay.
at the next meeting, if that's part of your request, Commissioner Maxwell?
Commissioner Maxwell?
At Commissioner Robinson's leisure, whenever we can put something on, put something together to submit on the agenda, that was the spirit of my friendly amendment.
Well,
Correct.
what is that?
Just so I
We've
understand,
I'm just waiting for the vote here before we have any more conversation, please. Aye or
Well-
nay?
it's with the understanding that it'll be on the next agenda.
I would not vote for that. It has nothing to do with this part of the meeting.
So is it aye or nay? That was what the friendly, that was what it basically is based on you and how quickly you can get that information to the city. If you can do it right
Well,
away,
what,
they can
you
come
know,
on the next
based on
agenda.
what, I'd really like clarification on what kind of information you need. This was a meeting to discuss a task force, which then it would be discussed. It's a simple putting on an agenda for the next meeting or the next special meeting. And the opposition was based on not having enough information when the information would come from that meeting. And if there are 3 votes against having that meeting, I will abide by that vote, but I'm trying to understand why you don't want to have a meeting to get information.
We do want to have a meeting to get information. That's what we're asking for. We're having an,
And then
we're asking to
why
have a
would we
meeting.
vote against having a meeting? That's what I'm,
Point of information.
We're trying to have a meeting is what was suggested by the motion. We've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye. This is to have a meeting at the next meeting. Aye.
Aye.
Roll call. Commissioner
Yes.
Robinson? Yes. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you all very much. Okay, we're going to move on to presentations. Oh, there are none. Commission liaison reports and comments. Commissioner Hardy, you're up first.
Yeah. Today I visited the county commission, which I don't do very often. I've done it twice this year, which is 2 more times than I've done it ever for public comment. And I did this in my capacity as the second vice president of the Caucus of Black Elected Officials here in Palm Beach County. And we delivered a letter to the commission, and the commission added it, by the way, to their agenda that day, or rather the night before, because they felt it was important and they didn't mind having a discussion because they recognized that the discussion was needed. But never mind that. The letter that we wrote the county commission, and that was read into the record by our president, vice mayor of Haverhill, Mr. Lawrence Gordon, basically said this: what happened to Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis, which we're all aware of, the fact that he had an encounter with the police and that the police officer killed him while 3 other officers watched, and the fact that multiple people got it on video, and the fact that had anyone here done that, we would have been arrested in 5 minutes, not 5 days. It would have taken 0 marches, protests, riots in order for any of us to go to jail had we done what Officer Chauvin did. That happened. And it wasn't just about Mr. Floyd, whose life is gone. You know, it's about every single person, as I said before our moment of silence, who pays law enforcement through their taxes to protect them and keep them safe. And at the same time, fears whether they will survive an encounter with the folks who they pay to keep them safe. That's what that letter that we sent to the county commission was about. And it was also about letting them know that we want changes made here locally and at the state. And it was also a warning. And it was a warning to elected officials on that board and elected officials countywide. Each and every elected official will get that letter. And it's basically this: those of us who are part of the BEO and those of us who know members of the BO, whether, we're dues paying members or not, we have pretty much agreed we won't be endorsing anyone. Not as a group, because we're a 501c3, we can't do anything, but the individual members will not be endorsing any person who does not push, agitate for, force a conversation about police reform in the jurisdictions in which they serve. There will not be an elected official in Palm Beach County who can have the privilege of putting an African-American face on their campaign literature unless their policies that they're pushing in their community address the fact that African-Americans have unfortunately been victims of police violence repeatedly in this county and counties in our region, in this state and across this country. And it hasn't been recent. It's been for decades and decades and decades. And, the actor Will Smith said something several years ago that is no less relevant today. He said, racism is not getting worse, it's being filmed. If you don't think that the things that have happened to George Floyd and Sandra Bland and the other folks around the country, Philando Castile, if you don't think that those things have been happening for decades, you're mistaken. And what I want to say is that applies here. I'm interested in Commissioner Robinson's motion to discuss when, whether, where, how to have a special meeting about this topic. But what I can tell you, special meeting or not, if there's not a special meeting, I can tell you right now on June 18th, there will be several items on this agenda that we will have a conversation about. Either you'll have the conversation and you'll vote against it or for it, or you'll stop the conversation and table it. But what African-American elected officials here in this county and what folks who are not of color want to see, who are elected in this county, is folks do whatever they can, however uncomfortable it may make them, however uncomfortable it may make their constituencies. We want to see people use the power they have to correct and address a major problem here in this county and in the United States of America. And so that's my message today. I feel so terribly for the family of George Floyd. I feel terribly for every Black person who has to scroll through their social media feed and see a body that looks like them lying lifeless on the pavement for the umpteenth time. I feel so terribly for, in addition, the shop owners whose stores have been damaged, not as a part of protests, because protesting involves chanting and marching. It doesn't involve looting. And what I've seen, there's a clear distinction between those who have looted and rioted and those who have protested. And I want to make sure that that's clear. I feel so sorry for this country that is now having a crisis on top of a crisis. This is not the place where we want to be, but it's really clear how we can fix this. There is unrest in this country. You fix it by addressing the underlying problem and by addressing it immediately. And that means some of us elected officials are going to have to get uncomfortable. And so I look forward to having a discussion about what we are going to change in this city. Actual policies, issues with our contracts, with our law enforcement agency who has done a great job here keeping us safe. I want to see some changes, and there are folks around this county that want to see some changes in each and every jurisdiction here. And we'll be pushing for them. I know I will. And so that's my liaison and report. Madam Mayor, I appreciate your presence at Mark Perilla's prayer vigil that was organized last week, or this weekend, rather. It feels like it was months ago. You know, things have, you know, developed so quickly. And I appreciate the good sentiments and good feelings and the alliances of elected officials across this county that know we have an issue. And I wish we had more sympathetic, mature leadership at the national level coming out of the White House. I wish that we didn't have to watch a president tear gas people to make way for a photo op at a church. But at this point, it's coming down to the thousands of cities locally. It's up to us to make a change. We can't rely on anyone else. And so I look forward to having these conversations in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardy. Vice Mayor?
I'm okay, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, I'm really like to have just let everybody know my pride in the city and in PBSO and the mayor for attending that march on Saturday, and Commissioner Hardy was there at the Cultural Plaza. I participated in the march in the afternoon. I was involved in food distribution in West Palm for the Saturday night event. It shows that we are a community of diversity and understanding, and with PBSO and their ability to act accordingly. And I appreciate them being there and providing the services that they're expected to provide. I think they deserve a lot of credit for the events. I guess I'm going to have to go on about the systemic injustice and racism that exists in the city and in the county and in the state and in the nation. And if we as leaders of our little community don't participate in trying to change it, we've all failed. We have heard about thinking globally and acting locally. Well, I expect to do that in terms of the schools, the prison reform, the courts, the banks, the real estate industry, all these things that contribute to death in our country. And I'm looking forward. I'm disappointed that we can't at least agree to have a meeting without delay. If anything, we need to demand body cams on our PBSO throughout the county. Body cams are a safety issue for the sheriffs. They're a safety issue for the citizens. And they're a legal tool that we need to use. So I think that body cams are at least the first thing that we should be involved with. I think that the requirement is on us to act, and if we're going to put off action when it's uncomfortable, we need to have the talk. Not the Black parents have the talk to their children. We as white people need to have the talk to ourselves and others, and our the people that can legislate change that will make a difference in this systemic. It's I just am astounded at the oppression that still exists in this country. Oppression leads to violence. So I'm not looking forward to any more violence. I do want change. I do want to say that the auditors being approved tonight, terrific job, and he's an asset to our the efficiency of our town. I've already shouted out to the mayor and PBSO for their actions over the weekend. If we don't demand body cams, shame on us. We've passed the 100,000 deaths from the virus. It's been a strange week. We've had a terrific, successful space launch from Florida, which was terrific. And I look forward to a better communication amongst ourselves. And if we couldn't be unified to address this madness that came upon us this weekend, all week, I'm disappointed. We are a great city. I think we can make a difference. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Robinson. Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank both Commissioner Robinson and Commissioner Hardy for their comments, for heartfelt comments. There are conversations that need to be taking place around the country. And I'm looking forward to whatever extent I can be involved, being part of that conversation. I'm very proud of our community and what we exhibited, if you will, if you want to call it, to the world this week with the peaceful demonstrations in the morning and the candlelight vigil in the evening. We are a huge, I've been in this city 30 plus years, and we hear it over and over and over again. We talk about diversity and how diverse Lake Worth Beach is. And I don't think you can find a more diverse population anywhere on planet Earth. I really don't. And I'm very proud to be a Lake Worth Beach resident. And I'm very proud of our residents and the fact that we all get along. And yes, we have our issues. And Madam Mayor, I think you've referred to this as kind of like the family thing. Within the family, you have your squabbles or whatever, but at the end of the day, we look out for each other. And, so I do look forward to being part of these conversations. And of course, my heart is very, very sad for George Floyd and his family and all the others who have, met a death that nobody deserves. And there are thousands and thousands of people across our country right now that are protesting for all the right reasons. And it's very, very unfortunate that there's a handful of folks that are out there taking advantage of this opportunity and using George Floyd's name to cause destruction and disruption. And, I don't think any one of those folks, when they pick up a brick or they're running down the street with somebody else's property, the last thing they're thinking about is George Floyd's memory. But I know that each one of us here this evening is, and many, many Americans across this country are. I don't know of anybody that couldn't hear of or see a clip, if you will, of how Mr. Floyd was treated and couldn't possibly come to the same conclusion. And that is that there is absolutely no excuse for anybody to be treated like that and to meet an untimely death. So I'm looking forward to the conversations that we're going to have coming forward. And Commissioner Robinson, I'm looking forward to your leadership on this issue. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm also looking forward to your leadership on this issue too. This weekend was, thank you guys for saying that. Thank you for what you've done too over the weekend and leading up to this. It's just a baffling time. I said it on Saturday, how can we all sit here and think that this death could happen in 2020? Have we really not come this far in all of these years that these things are still happening. It's just a travesty. It's an absolute travesty. And I don't want you to think for 1 second, gentlemen, that I'm delaying this meeting for other than the fact of I want to really have a comprehensive discussion about this. I want us to be able to sit there and put things together that we can do as a community to speak. I mean, the one thing that we've got going for us is that while we do have PBSO, which is a county organization, they still treat us like we're Lake Worth Beach. You know what I mean? There are guys, a lot of our guys that were in our local Lake Worth Police Department are part of our gang here at Lake Worth Beach, our police officers here. And I will tell you that they're very, I had a chance to talk to some of them, and they're very sensitive to this issue, and they're very much knowledgeable about how we feel as a city, about what our diversity is like. And, and they're really, some of them were heartbroken. Some of them were just couldn't wait to speak out about it. And I really want, these managers and stuff with PBSO, as well as people in our community, to come out and talk about this together and create solutions and a direct order for us, in whatever way we need to. I'm fine with it being the next meeting. It could be as quickly as possible. That's okay. I just want us to have enough time to let the community know to come out and to be a part of the discussions and have a really good comprehensive discussion, not just throwing it on there and saying, do you want to talk? You want to talk? And then all of us giving our opinion. Let's really look at what we can do as a city. I am so very proud of our residents and everyone that came out this weekend to the different walks and the vigil and the protest. And again, Commissioner Hardy, you're right. There's a difference between protesting and a difference between looting. There's a difference between protesting peacefully and violent and vandalizing, someone's business. And, if anyone can do it, we can do it as a city. We can do it and be a shining beacon in how we move forward from this with the voices of all of our people from all of our communities throughout Lake Worth Beach. We have that opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. I want to thank everybody again for your involvement, for your words, for your passion, for your compassion, and most importantly, sending our prayers out to the Floyd family and their loved ones and everyone else. And of course, all those who have come before him, that things got to change and we've got to make a difference. And like I said, if anyone can make a difference, Lake Worth Beach can make a difference. I'm proud of you all that we had good results. And I pray that we continue, to speak out respectfully and to do the right thing, and to make a difference. So that's very, very important. And thank you all. Thank you to staff. This has been, COVID has been crazy too. All these things going on at one time has been just crazy. And I know some people will say, oh, Lake Worth's a hot spot, Lake Worth's a hot spot, Lake Worth's a hot spot. You know what? We are testing more than any other communities are testing, because we know that the people in our community are not going to go to 45th Street and 15 Ballpark. They need us to go to their communities where they're at and test them. They need us to go. We need to work with our farm workers. We need to work with, all kinds of people throughout our city that are not going to leave or don't have transportation to leave or don't have trust within the community to want to go somewhere else. They need to be treated here. And thank you to the Guatemala Mayan Center and to so many different organizations. Thank you to all my fellow commissioners who have been reaching out to different organizations to help. I want to let everyone know that this Saturday, June 6th, Caridad Center, they serve about 6,000 uninsured people throughout Palm Beach County who would otherwise use ER for care. And for the children, you all know them. They offer high quality, affordable pre and after school programs for children and families. Miss Reggie and everyone that works there, together with the city of Lake Worth Beach, of course, all of us, and Lab 24. They've been donating the tests. We're going to have, again, continued free COVID-19 testing for Lake Worth Beach residents, Caridad Center patients, for the children clients in Lake Worth Beach. And that's this Saturday, June 6th, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Osborne Community Center. And we're asking everyone to please reach out to those who are in high-risk categories that might not be feeling well, or who are not feeling well. Please, we've had an uptick because we're seeking out people to test them. We're not just expecting them to possibly show up and then take the 100 people and say whatever. We're going into the communities, and it means, yes, higher numbers, but it means we're doing the right thing too. And I want to thank everyone for being involved in that. And if you need more information on that, please don't hesitate to call. All right, let's move on. So much important stuff going on, guys. Thank you so much. We'll have public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. City Clerk, do we have any?
Madam Mayor, I only had one item and it was on the agenda, but since it's a non-agenda item now, it will be heard on the 16th. I will hold his comments until the 16th. And I emailed him today and told him that.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, and then the, let's see, approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda, remembering that we moved that one item to consent. The unfinished business item.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
second. I'm sorry, who made a second?
Second, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're going to move on to our public hearing. This is an ordinance number 2020-04. This is a second reading. We heard this the last time around. City Attorney, would you read it for official purposes?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-04 of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, authorizing the incurrence by the city of debt obligations to fund reserves for cash flow deficits related to the COVID-19 pandemic, providing that such obligations of the city do not create a general debt or obligation of the city or the state, but shall be payable from legally available revenues appropriated for such purpose and providing an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Robinson. Again, this is a second reading. We had the presentation the last time. Did anyone have anything further to say? If not, I'll call for a vote if there are no public comment cards. City Clerk?
There are no public comment cards.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Again, item unfinished business A was removed. So we're going to move on to new business. These are 3 ordinances in a row. So City Attorney, put your speaking voice on. We're going to move on to item A. This is about amending the future land use map of the city's comprehensive plan. Would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-06 of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending the city's comprehensive plan future land use map through a large-scale map amendment from the future land use FLU designation of mixed-use east and mixed-use west to the transit-oriented development FLU designation on property generally located along the Lake Worth Road corridor between Boutwell Road and North A Street, and more fully described in Exhibit A, providing that conflicting ordinances are repealed, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
Second?
And
Second? Second?
Second.
Okay. I've got a motion by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Vice Mayor. You almost made it, Commissioner Hardy. A second behind. All right. William, you want to start?
Actually, Erin Sita has joined us as our associate, our assistant community sustainability director. She'll be giving the presentation on the comp plan amendments. I'm here to answer questions in her tandem, but this week is her first full week as a full-time employee with us. So welcome, Erin.
Well, congratulations and welcome. Let's try to be gentle with her, gentlemen. Let's try to let her get through her presentation. We'll ask questions after, okay? Thank you. Erin?
You're muted, Erin.
Can you unmute, Erin?
Erin is unmuted, but we can't hear her.
That's not good. Hmm.
This is where I always joked about doing these with interpretive dance.
You're gonna have to share your screen.
There she is.
You'll have to find it.
Okay. Okay. So sorry, just give me one quick second here and we'll walk you through the presentation. I'm gonna have to share the screen from Williams. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Okay. So let me pull. Odd. William, can you run can you run the PowerPoint from my computer and we're gonna have to walk through?
Yeah.
So we seem to be unable to run the PowerPoint from William's computer and I'm unable to speak from mine. So we're gonna just.
I've got your PowerPoint.
Wonderful. Keith is gonna run the PowerPoint. So
This
I'm
one?
glad we sent it to him as a backup.
Me too.
So basically the item before you, this is a future land use map amendment. And Keith, if you can go ahead and put it on slide 3, I'd appreciate it.
Yep.
So we'll just jump right into it. This is the future land use map amendment. So we're actually amending, or we're proposing to amend the map in 2 locations in the area around the I-95 corridor north of Lake Worth Road. The first area is an area from mixed use west to TOD. This is approximately 7 acres. And the other area, or sorry, mixed use east. And it's north of Lake Worth Road, west of A Street and east of 95. And then the larger tract is from mixed use west to TOD. This is approximately 19.5 acres. And again, this is from mixed use west to the TOD future land use designation. Can you go ahead and change the slide, please? So the reason for this change is that these areas provide a prime location for transit-oriented development. They're adjacent or in the vicinity of the Tri-Rail station, bus stops, and they're proximate to the I-95 and US Highway 1 corridors. And the proposed amendment was in response to market-driven conditions for economic development, and this for this desired designation in this area. Next slide, please. So staff is recommending approval of these items. These amendments are consistent with the city's housing goals for diversity, support of mixed-use transit. They're supported by and consistent with the comprehensive plan and the comprehensive in the city's strategic plan. And I also want to add that part of the analysis that we do for a comp plan is we look at the change in density and intensity for the proposed future land use, and we look at levels of service. So this would be, do you have enough raw water? Is there enough traffic capacity? All of those things are analyzed per the requirements of Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes. So we have provided all of that relevant and appropriate data based on the city's goals and with these level of service requirements. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erin. That was great. All right, do we have any questions? Okay, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. City Clerk, do we have any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, Commissioner Hardy. Yeah, what's with the, nobody has a hand raised thing?
Mine shows my hand raised.
Hold on.
It's gotta be the update.
Something happened.
Yeah.
The program updated today. I had to send some updates in and it's not doing what it used to do.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor, this is Keith. I'm making you co-host right now, so you should definitely be able to see the hand raises.
Okay.
I
Okay,
just wanted to say that I could not support these changes more. I think that we should certainly be going in this direction. I think, you know, anyone who talks to me, you know, I wish that there was even more density allowed in our TUD land use designation. I'm glad that this change is being made. I look forward to seeing it utilized in the future.
Okay.
So really
Commissioner
positive.
Robinson? I'm sorry, did we finish there?
Yeah.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the staff, William and the staff, and our new hire for doing her best. Would you call, the question is this, I know it's a delicate question, I guess, maybe. Is this considered upzoning?
No such thing as upzoning.
No, it's not upzoning. It's just considered changing the future land use designation. So it changes the fundamental entitlement of the property. So
Which has the opportunity, where I'm going with this is the value of that land now is hopefully increased, and the property between the two new zones isn't in the city, and now we should market to have that enclave part of the city. I'm just looking forward to that little bit of tax base that's not included in the city to be marketed to those people for the value that we've just added to their property.
Thank you. City Clerk, did you say there was a card?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving on to new business ordinance number 2020-05, amend future land use element of the city's comprehensive plan. Sorry, City Attorney, would you read the formal ordinance for me, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-05 of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending policies in the future land use element of the city's comprehensive plan relating to the mixed-use east, downtown mixed-use, and transit-oriented development future land use FLU designations, including modifications to the FLU development requirements, limitations, and general location descriptions, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion. Vice Mayor, was that you?
So moved. That
was you? Okay.
was me.
You had
So
your
moved.
hand up too. Moved by Commissioner Hardy. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Hello? Commissioner Robinson, is that a second?
No, this the question is, this is not the ordinance that affects South Federal Highway.
It is.
it is that ordinance,
It is.
but
Are
there
then-
are 5 items within that ordinance. So there is an ability to make different motions on different components of the ordinance.
At
Okay.
what time? At what
Well,
point?
we-
Point
Point of
of information. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Commissioner
So,
Hardy.
if you want the discussion to continue, but if you want to potentially change the document or change which parts of the document we accept, you can always, Herman, second this motion and subsequently make a subsidiary motion to amend what we're talking about here. But I think it's important that we begin the discussion of the whole thing that we're talking about. And I sort of, you know, yeah.
I'll second it with an unfriendly amendment that excludes South Federal Highway.
Okay.
Sorry.
I can't accept, I think we should have the discussion. So I cannot, I think we need
Well, I
to.
have to, yeah.
Madam
hold on
Mayor,
a
are you on the mayor? Are you
Yeah,
running the meeting?
last I checked, I was running the meeting, but I don't know anymore. Commissioner Hardy made a motion. Are you gonna make that? He's not gonna adhere to your amendment. So would you like to continue the motion just to discuss it? Or would you like to, we could have 2 separate votes here in the next few minutes. And
Well,
still
I
have
don't know.
discussion.
I haven't talked to any of the other voters, so I'm at
What
risk of.
I'm just saying, you can make the motion just for discussion, Commissioner Robinson, and then we can talk about any amendments later on if you're interested in it. This is just to get the topic started. We do this all the time.
Second.
There you go. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Well,
Oh,
Madam,
we've got to, okay, I'm sorry. You got me over Clint here. I'm sorry. Let's go on. Let's go back to the original. Let me take control of this meeting here for a second. All right, so William, where's the presentation?
Madam Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and present again on this particular item. Aaron Sita for the record.
Thank goodness.
Please bring up the same presentation again and go to the next part. This would be item B. And if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Keep going through to item B, please. Oh, back a little bit. So there, stop. So these are the proposed text amendments. There are 5 components to this package. And what we've done for the discussion is, because we understand that the federal highway component is the most controversial, is we have split up the presentation, and we'll discuss the federal highway component, and then we will discuss the other items. So this is a city initiated amendment to the future land use amendment. It's to the following 3 future land use designations policies, which are mixed use east, transit oriented development, and downtown mixed use future land use designation. This amendments will include modifications to the future land use development requirements, including density limitations and general location descriptions. Next slide, please. So this is the first particular item. This is the federal highway amendment. This is an amendment to modify the density allowed within the zoning district. The maximum density for the future land use designation of mixed use east is 30 dwelling units per acre. There are 3 zoning districts consistent with this future land use designation. One of them is the mixed use federal highway district, which is the subject of the amendment. The proposed amendment would modify the density permitted in this zoning district from 20 units an acre to 30 units an acre. Next slide, please. So what we did is, when looking at kind of the corridor and the existing development on the corridor, you can see that there is several properties that do not meet the current code. And what we did is we looked, many of these are hotels or motel uses. Some are apartment uses. And this is what is existing in the South Federal Highway corridor. And you can see that the relative densities range anywhere between 22 and 53 units an acre for the existing developed sites. Next slide, please. Also looking at this, as we looked at what are current projects that are coming in with our current land development requirements. These are requirements for parking, landscaping, and this is these are examples of items that are being constructed within the 30 to 40 dwelling unit per acre range within the city under the current LDRs, including the major thoroughfare design guidelines. The first example is the one, which is constructed at approximately 32 dwelling units per acre with 14 units. It also has a commercial component. And then the mid, which has a density of 42 dwelling units an acre at 230 units. Next slide, please. And this is not a real factual, but we wanted to just kind of give you a vibe of massing and scale from what is currently permitted within the district as far as height, setbacks, landscaping, and we can kind of compare that to the one, which is it's a development that's on a little bit less than half an acre. And you can see there's some existing constructed townhomes on the South Federal Highway corridor. And just to compare, the townhomes are larger individual units. Typically condominium units or apartment units are between 800 and 1300 square feet per unit. The units in the one are approximately 1300 square feet. And just to share information, the apartments or the multifamily dwelling units type, as well as the single family dwelling units and the townhome dwelling units, are permitted currently within the Federal Highway District. Those are all 3 units types that are permitted. Also permitted in the district is a height of 3 stories with an additional potential if you're in a planned development to go to 4 stories. And I believe that, can you click on the next slide? That concludes that component of the presentation. Madam Mayor, did you want to have discussion on that particular item? I know that this was a controversial item. The advisory boards both recommended not to transmit to the commission. So did you want to have discussion on that, or did you want me to continue and walk through the rest of the items?
Let's stop if we can and start with this right away. I see some hands up already. So Commissioner Robinson, you had your hands up first.
Well, I am certainly in favor of density appropriately placed. South Federal Highway is near and dear to my heart in terms of development. And if we could have more of the cloisters and which is at 20 units an acre, would be a wonderful thing. I am sorry that the 30 units without any control over design, I am not in favor of.
Okay, Commissioner Hardy?
Yeah, a few thoughts here. The first thing is density, and I hesitate to even say this because I don't really think density is a good thing. I don't think we should be afraid of densifying the city pretty much anywhere. And I've been on record on this generally. I don't think we should regulate density. I think we should regulate form. How these buildings relate to the street, how they relate to each other. And get off the how many units are in your building situation. Because, you know, there are tons of examples of stuff that you and I would find totally acceptable. But if someone told you the density of this building is what it is, you would think, oh my gosh, no way, but it's completely acceptable. We need to get off of the number. Oh, this is 30 units an acre, and ask yourself, am I comfortable with a particular project being built where it is? And the idea that somehow the one, which I'm glad that example was included in here, is inappropriate for South Federal Highway is ridiculous. Or the idea that you can build something the exact same footprint of the cloisters, but you cannot have more units than what the cloisters have. So you can build something that if you were to walk down the street would look exactly the same. But if you were to put more units within that building footprint, it would be a problem. Even though we still, by the way, have parking requirements. Even though we still, by the way, have landscape requirements. Even though we still, by the way, have limitations on Florida area ratio, FAR. Okay, even though we still have all these other limitations that people have to fit their projects within. The idea that somehow that number of people living there is going to make the area unlivable is not something that those of us who govern in cities should accept. So that's number one. That said, 30 units an acre is nothing. And you can find examples of things that are in the 20 to 30 units. And by the way, 30 units would be the max if we were to accept this amendment. You can find examples of things between 20 and 30 that are perfectly acceptable. Go on the 300 block, I believe, of North O, and you will find a fourplex that I swear to God for years was a single family home. It's on a lot that's 50 by 135. You walk by, you think it's a single family home. You walk up to it, you think that maybe there are 2 doors. You get really on the porch, you see there are 3 doors on the front. You go around to the back, as I did, knocking on doors nicely for my reelection, and you realize that there are 4 units on that property, which is 50 by 135. That means that fourplex, which exists in perfect harmony with its single family neighbors, is a 26 unit an acre project, which would be illegal on South Federal Highway today. It makes no sense. There are examples all over the city of stuff that's perfectly fine, that's perfectly harmonious with their that are perfectly harmonious with their neighbors, but that we've made illegal. And so what I think the presentation showed is that over time, the city was downzoned, and that hasn't worked for the city. And if you don't think that downzoning has made South Federal Highway dysfunctional, look at the fact that absolutely almost nothing has happened there, with the exception of the cloisters, which by the way was built at a time when the housing market was very different than it is today. Right? Absolutely nothing very few things work there. Very few things pencil out. And so the only people who can make their project work are frankly developers that are mission driven. That's why we have a mission driven developer with a project, or soon to be hopefully a project application coming in, because guess what? They're not interested in making money. They have a mission, they're going to accomplish it, they're funded. So, and that leads me to my next point. So again, just to recap, density is good, but I don't even think this is a particularly dense, it obviously increases the density, but a max of 30 units an acre is nothing. Thirdly, let's talk about what's there now. Okay, and let's talk about the complaints that folks in the area have. We've all been to meetings in South Palm Park Neighborhood Association, and we've all been to meetings here where members of South Palm Park came to the commission chambers and said, you need to fix South Federal Highway. You need to encourage development along South Federal Highway. There are prostitutes, there are drug dealers, there are these nonprofits, which by the way are the only people who have found it worthwhile to invest in the area because they're not interested in a return, because if they were, they wouldn't get much of it based on the number of units that they can get there today. There are these nonprofits here that are bringing, as they have described, folks who they don't find desirable in their neighborhoods. And you need to fix that problem. So what does staff do? Staff, William Waters, Ms. Sita, has proposed something to make projects on South Federal Highway more economical. And so what do the folks who have complained about South Federal Highway do? Come to us and say, oh, no, these weren't the changes we were talking about. This is becoming absurd. If you want things to change, you have to accept that change might not be the exact type of change you want. Folks want to have all their cake and eat it too. Look, South Federal Highway is a highway. It's a state highway. And the idea that 30 units an acre is not appropriate anyway, okay, but certainly that it's not appropriate on a highway, because on the back side of it, not facing it, but across an alley, folks, there are single family homes there. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And we have professionals on our staff to whom, I won't speak for them, but I'll say that their proposal speaks for itself as to what they in their professional capacity believes should be done and what's appropriate and acceptable there. And so I don't know what to do. I'm just prepared to throw up my hands. You want us to fix South Federal Highway, we try to fix it, oh no, not that. Well, what? Are we just gonna spend the next 20 years going to first appearance, trying to lock up prostitutes and sex workers who don't have any option in life? Is that our long-term solution? No, the long-term solution is to increase the development capacity of the highway so that people can build stuff on it that works financially. And if you don't do that, 10 years from now, it's gonna look exactly that way. Now, as to this issue, as I've heard two things in particular. We want more things like the cloisters. That's one thing I've heard. We've also heard is, well, densifying this area doesn't make any sense because there's no transit in the area, it's been said. Every time I hear that latter argument, my head nearly explodes, because if you pull up this thing called a map, you will see that on Dixie Highway, there are at least 5 bus stops, at least 5 to 6 bus stops between the southern boundaries of the city and 6th Avenue South on Dixie Highway. And each and every one of those bus stops is less than half a mile from South Federal Highway. The idea that someone living in a development on South Federal Highway wouldn't be able to benefit from the bus stops on South Dixie Highway when they are a 3, in one case, a 3-minute to 8-minute walk maximum is ridiculous. There is mass transit within a 5-minute walk or a half a mile, which is called the pedestrian. William, am I wrong that the pedestrian shed is typically thought to be a half a mile, about a 5 to 10-minute walk?
It's usually between a quarter of a mile and a half a mile. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So, and look, I am prepared to lose this argument, but the idea that, oh, there's no mass transit there, there's this thing called a map, and it's available to anyone with Google. The other thing is we need more of the cloisters. If someone were to try to build the cloisters today, which is what William has been saying, it wouldn't work financially. Because when those things were being built and marketed, and when those folks came in with their plans, the housing market was totally different. They're not getting the prices for these units that they thought they were going to get. Yet the land costs the same. And so what this change would allow a developer to build something the same exact footprint of the cloisters, but to divide basically the cost of building that footprint among more future home buyers or tenants or what have you, thereby making the property more economic. And the idea that that's somehow inappropriate, look, if we don't do this, nothing's going to get built here, period. Or it's going to be all the stuff that you don't want. And the idea that there's some needle we can thread, and folks have been trying to thread this needle in Lake Worth for 30 years. We have to move decisively in a direction, and we're not doing that. And so I don't know how my colleagues feel about this amendment. I think it is more than I think it's more than appropriate. And here's the other thing, to address some comments that were made at the Historic Resources and Preservation Board meeting. There were two people who were opposed to this, one of whom opposed it based on their acumen and their knowledge and their study, that being Bill Feldkamp, who basically said, based on my experience as an architect and as someone who's been involved in professional development, I think this could lead to speculation and so on and so forth. He gave a very studied and reasoned argument to oppose this change, and I respect that. Another member gave an argument that left me aghast, who basically said that if we did this, more quote unquote undesirable people would be living in, near, and around me. And that I found to be an utterly repugnant course of train of thought to pursue here. Every single person deserves a place to lay their head, even in a neighborhood where the people who live there are fortunate enough to own the structures in which they live. The idea that this city should refuse to take official action in order to entrench a group of people in their own exclusive neighborhoods, to protect the exclusivity of their neighborhoods, the idea that we should use our power to do that, to basically use our zoning powers to further and ossify segregation by class, income, or any other way, which is what the gentleman suggested we do, whether he said that explicitly or not, the implication is clear.
All right, let's let everyone have a chance to speak here, Commissioner Hardy, please. Thank you. Commissioner Vice Mayor?
Yes, my 2 cents. I support Commissioner Robinson on removing South Federal Highway from this motion. And Aaron, I want to thank you for everything that you do. You're fabulous. But at some point, I think we need, whether we move forward with this or any of it, to look at exactly what's going on with the parking in those situations on South Federal Highway. If you look at what's built now, the parking overflow is in the empty lots that have not been built on. So obviously there's an issue around parking. So I'd like to address that in the future if you can. But I can't support the motion as written. Again, you know, I support taking South Federal out.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would say, oh, sorry, Commissioner Robinson, you had something to add?
Well, I'll listen to you first if you want. If not, I'll go. I just briefly, you know, we have, I don't think we need another highway dividing our city. Dixie Highway is a highway. Federal is a 2-lane major street. And I'm looking for quality, not quantity, in that neighborhood. I just think that we should, William and his bag of tricks of ordinances and whatever, you know, all the books he knows everything about, can develop a plan for Federal Highway that we have control over design. That's what my concern is. I'm pretty sure that the people of that neighborhood on both the east and the west side don't want to see a mid on South Federal Highway. And so if we could anyway develop the density and keep control of design, I'm for it. But the way it is now, I'm very comfortable with leaving the way it is now. I would like to somehow incentivize quality versus quantity by some means of a CRA organization on South Federal Highway. I don't know. I'm not enough of a bureaucrat to develop something like that, but I'm thinking that that might be a way to increase the density and maintain design. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go to public comment if there are any cards first here.
There are not, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so then we'll go back for second apple bites here. Commissioner Hardy?
Sure. You know, what I'll say is, and you know, when I'm done, I'd love for William to address this. There are form-based elements to our comp plan and our code. And when I'm done with this second bite, if William could address that, there are things in our code that address the way that things look and how they relate to the street and their neighboring areas. And you know, that's why we have, for example, a sustainable bonus incentive program. Now, I wish that it were all by right and that we just had a completely form-based code, but that's not what we have. We have somewhat of a hybrid, and we can, I think William is much more adept at discussing that. But if Commissioner Robinson, your concern is the way things look, there are a ton of things in this code that not only give boards the opportunity to say no to a particular project on a number of bases, but there are things in this code that tell the developer how to do what we allow. Not just here's what we allow, but we have a code that tells them how to do it. The other thing is, you know, the broader issue here is that over the past 10 years, the city's made progress, but we haven't made the leap. Even though we've had the longest economic expansion in modern history, we haven't made the leap. And we are still, and by the way, while we've been progressing, so have our neighbors, Delray, your Boynton Beach, your West Palm Beach, right? So all the progress that we've made hasn't seen us improve our competitiveness very much with our neighbors because they've been doing a damn good job too. Excuse my language. And so we have to ask ourselves a question. This approach that we've been taking that privileges these views that we don't want the city to change too much, but at the same time, we want it to change radically in the areas that we would like. That view that we've been privileging hasn't helped improve our station relative to our peers. And look, I am here until November 2nd, but I have been consistent for the past 3 years that I think we need to move decisively in the direction of densification and in the direction of doing what we have to do to make the pro formas work, period. And this is one of those areas that folks have complained about forever. And here we are with something that will make this work. There are projects just waiting to put shovels, to put in applications, to put shovels in the ground and to do that whole thing, but they don't work financially right now. And you know what? It's incumbent on every person who I have seen discuss this on social media, who I have heard discuss this at HRPB or planning and zoning. It's incumbent on each one of them. If they're going to say no to this, then what is their plan? What is their? I want to know what their plan is, and when can we subject their plan to the sorts of tests that William has subjected his ideas to? That's what I would really want to hear from every single naysayer. So William, if you would like to talk about the form-based aspects of the code that ensure quality of product that get built, that's it. And I'm shut up, and I'll be ready to lose this vote.
William, do you want to talk about that?
We can talk about it a little. As you recall, last year you did adopt updated major thoroughfare guidelines that do govern all construction, major renovation, new construction on Federal Highway. That has better described and outlined how you utilize the form-based components of our code. Even though this proposed change does increase the density, it does not change the allowable building envelope size that can happen. As Mr. Omari mentioned, the building size will remain the same. It would just have more units in it. We do have architectural standards in the major thoroughfare guidelines, setback requirements, landscape requirements, parking requirements. As Mr. Amoroso mentioned, there are parking problems in some sites that are already existing, which Aaron alluded to earlier. Many of them are not developed to the standards that we have today.
Thank you.
The proposal before you also would stipulate how our code works. Those projects any project utilizing this additional density would have to be at least a half an acre, and it would have to come to the city commission for 2 votes for approval. It would not be a straight by right approval. Part of Federal Highway is also in a historic district, so it would those standards would be applied as well. So we have as many design criteria in place and guidelines as any other city I know of to ensure that if new development were to come in, that would be of a high quality and appropriate architectural style. And the most important piece is that new construction on Federal Highway has to front the street and have an appropriate separation from the alley, thus providing some relief to the single family homes on either side. That's our program sort of in a nutshell real easily.
Okay, so now here's the question for you. If you would have said, first of all, Commissioner Hardy, I agree with you about compatibility. I've been trying to talk about compatibility for 9 years now and talk about the problem with our city is that most of the properties are non-conforming properties. So every neighborhood that's set up and every development that's set up and you go to the 4 corners of our city and you will see non-conforming properties and structures everywhere. And the problem is that this whole area was created that backs up to a single family neighborhood. And there was no compatibility thought about, the height of the structures. 9 years ago, you couldn't talk about anything over 35 feet. Now we're having conversations about this, and you'd have to have 17 charrettes just to talk to the neighborhood associations about what you were going to build, in the 5-mile radius of it in the city, 7 square miles. So we've come a long way, baby. But the parking problems there are huge in regards to the alleyways, a lot of the apartment complexes and some of the sober homes and all the other buildings that are there, they stretch out into those alleyways. And then there's dumping in the alleyways, and then there's all kinds of stuff in the alleyways. There's a lot of issues I think that need to be addressed with the community that I think you'd get more buy-in on the compatibility issue. Because I have seen structures like you're talking about that look like the cloisters, that are apartments as opposed to, and you're talking about apartments that are, like $900 to $1,200 a month, depending on the size of them, that are beautiful buildings and whatnot, that have amenities and pools and parking garages and all different types of things that are beautiful. I don't think right now, I think that we need a little bit more outreach with the community so that they can understand and see some of these types of projects and what they could do to enhance the community. It comes down to the old chicken and egg. People say you want to get rid of the crime and the prostitution and this, you got to put more feet on the street. So density is the call for that there. And then there's also people that have been dealing with a lot of crime issues constantly in their backyard. That they just haven't quite dealt with it yet. I think it might be a little more advantageous to do some more reaching out, to kind of have some more conversations with them, and to have the city address some of the other crime issues we've been trying to address for the last, couple months, City Manager?
Yes, Madam Mayor, actually, we started meeting the end of last year.
Yeah. So, we need to address this, but we also, I see the frustration in both sides, because I understand that, while the other cities, have been kicking our butts, they also don't have 7 square miles and they don't, but I don't know. I'm sort of tossed in between on this one, but I will definitely tell you that I'm not ready to proceed with Federal Highway at this juncture. I don't think this needs to be removed from this item, as the Vice Mayor said. Vice Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up and now it's gone. Are you still? You still want to
Well-
talk?
Can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yes, I can.
Well, yes. It's unfortunate that this issue has come up during this pandemic. A lot of the discussions within the boards and the community concerns, all those conversations for the most part have been taken place over the last few months. And you're absolutely right, Madam Mayor. There needs to be a more comprehensive look at that area of the city in its totality. I mean, it still boggles my mind why we can't get a grip on the prostitution, why we can't do a better job with some of these quality of life issues. But then again, I think we need to all come together and really think out of the box, when it comes to dealing with these issues. The last meeting I think we were at, or maybe it was the meeting before that, we had some conversations about parties being thrown, in the neighborhoods and the perceived inability of PBSO to address those parties. So I clearly understand the concerns of the residents. I just wish we could all come together, have the residents say, hey, this is what we see the need to be on South Federal Highway. And somehow we could think out of the box, like I said, in addressing some of these quality of life issues. But I guess at the end of the day, well, first of all, I'm not going to support this evening. But, if there's any interest, if it's appropriate, perhaps we should reach out to the neighborhood, South Palm Park, and ask them point blank, would you like us to consider bringing something similar to this up in the future? And if so, what are you looking for? Because as Commissioner Hardy said, you can't say you want change, but then you're not willing to make the change. I mean, or things will just stay stagnant the way they have. And it is disheartening to see all that vacant land on South Federal Highway just there, because we haven't found the sweet spot, if you will, between what meets the needs of the residents and what meets the needs and the profitability and the viability, if you will, of the landowners. So unfortunately, I won't be able to support that tonight, but I'm very interested in having a conversation or conversations with all parties involved on how we can come together and come up with a better solution for that area of the city.
Commissioner Robinson?
I don't want anybody to forget Pineapple Beach in that neighborhood.
Exactly.
My dismay is that we haven't been able to see what's going to be built, and we can't reject. We don't have a architectural review part of this process. I would be like Commissioner Hardy does a fantastic job at a debate on an argument on selling density. I want it, but without an assurance of what it's going to look like, I can't make that leap right now. And unless William has some method to approve each project as it comes, I'm sorry.
You can't do that either, though. You can't.
No, I know. So
That's the problem. I mean, we're trying to create, rules and regulations to allow for to create broad strokes for people to be able to come and bring projects that they want to do. I think, what my biggest frustration over many years has been the compatibility issue, to look at something not for the actual height or for the whatever, what exists there, what could happen there, what's going to complement the neighborhood. We haven't really we used to have some big design discussions back years ago, and we really haven't had a chance to show that. I remember William coming to the commission with different renderings of what projects would look like. And, we really were going through, to see what this new density actually means in a newer development. I think it's an educational process, and I think people will be more apt to understand a change in density if they can see the types of projects that are being created today, and to take a look at a project like the Cloisters, right? What would a guy who was building townhouses that looked like the Cloisters, or 3 stories with an elevator in it, what would they have to get financially to get one of those units today. They'd have to sell them for like $450,000, $500,000 to get that kind of money. And is that possible today? 600,000, Commissioner Hardy? Is that possible in today's market to do it? So, so people, more developers are looking towards, higher end apartments at market rate prices and things of that nature with amenities, like the Mid or, like other projects that are coming up. But the Mid's a big project on a lot of land. What could happen in a smaller piece of land? I think these are conversations that we need to have, and we can't be scared about having them, and we need to get to the next place. But I think rather than, we always seem to get in trouble when we try to pass something quickly without the neighborhood that's going to be mostly affected by it having a chance to weigh in on it and to start showing people, educating them as to what's happening in construction today and how that changes, and also what that can mean to the neighborhood and change maybe some of the crime issues. You got to remember, we had a bunch of old Finnish motels that, that were blighted and closed, and then they were bought out by people that had apartments, and then they were turned into sober homes, and they were turned into prostitution. So it's gone this genesis of things. We got to come back to see, we have to start to create some solutions. And I understand the frustration on everyone's behalf. We're all trying to do the same thing, coming at it from a different way. But let's sit down with the neighborhoods, Pineapple Beach, South Palm Park, Bryant Park, all that whole area, and see, if we can shed some vision from some of the people that are looking at projects in that neighborhood or more. But we've got no public comment cards according to the city clerk, and we've got a motion and a second, remembering that the motion was to accept it as written, and it was never accepted because the motion wasn't changed when Commissioner Robinson wanted to make it change. So the original motion, Commissioner Hardy, you have a question?
You're muted.
I thought that, and Madam Clerk, can you tell me whether Commissioner Robinson was understood to have seconded the motion eventually?
Yeah.
The motion that I made?
He did.
Yes,
second
he
the
did.
motion.
He did. He seconded the motion as originally written, not with the item that he tried to make us an adjusted emotion.
Wanted to take out South Federal Highway, and
Correct.
then he changed it to, just for conversation's sake, he said he seconded the motion.
Correct. And the current motion includes South Federal Highway. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Hold on, Mayor.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay.
Motion, Madam Mayor, may I make a motion?
Yes.
I will make a motion to accept and approve all parts of this that do not pertain to South Federal Highway. Without making a dilatory motion, I think it's a travesty we couldn't accept that today, but that's the motion I'll be making.
Second.
Do I have
Madam
a
Mayor,
second? Yes, City Manager.
I think staff needs to give a clarification. You're using the term South Federal Highway. William, you want to clarify?
We wanted to clarify that we have other parts to this ordinance besides just the federal highway component. And I think we're clear on what we're, in Commissioner Hardy's motion. The first piece of this 5-part change is to be eliminated. We will not change the ultimate density of the mixed-use federal highway zoning district as it pertains to the mixed-use east future land use designation.
Correct. Okay, gotcha. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. So he's eliminating mixed-use east federal highway change of zoning from 20 to 30. Commissioner Hardy has made a motion to accept all the other items except for federal highways.
Mixed use federal highway, yeah.
And it was
Correct.
second.
And it was seconded by whom?
Me.
South, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Okay, yes. All right, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
We-
Commissioner Hardy,
Yeah.
you're opposed?
No, I had a question for William.
Oh, we just voted. Okay.
Well, this is a different motion. It's not the same motion that we made before. So I had a
But
question.
we already voted. Does it
But
gonna
I-
change?
I-
We can't change the outcome of the vote, just so you're knowledgeable of that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, this is a new motion. Each motion should have an opportunity to be discussed. This is a different matter.
I understand. I didn't see your raised hand. I wasn't trying to be adversarial.
I understand. So, there was talk about how we need to reach out to the neighborhood before we make changes quick and fast. there's a major change to the density and the transit-oriented development area. I live near that area. Lots and lots of people live near that area. You have the people in the Holiday Mobile Home Park. You have the people in my development, which is the villages of Lake Worth. You have the folks who live in the mobile home park just behind El Bodegón. Did we do any outreach? And by the way, that has an established association. Did we do any outreach to those? To the mobile home parks and to the people who live in them.
William?
Also
Is that who
to
you're asking?
the people who live in my area.
We've only done outreach in the sense of taking information in as people have bought and sold property in the transportation or in development district, like the El Bodegón. The family bought that supermarket. There have been people interested in developing the property next door, which is vacant, in discussions with various entities that would like to make an overture to do something in the mobile home park or the properties north of the school. All have voiced interest in being able to have the ability to do some type of development very similar to what we had in our Envision brochure that was TOD related.
Yeah, and you know,
We had numerous charrettes about it too, back in the day.
well, yeah, but this is the same exact thing with this TOD area around which a lot of people live who are stakeholders too. The same exact thing here, which we're all prepared to accept without any of the outreach that we're saying should occur to residents of South Palm Park. And I'm glad that Commissioner Robinson brought in Pineapple Beach. That same thing that we rejected on South Federal Highway is happening here. Even though the densities, the differences here are substantial as well. That mobile home park is not nearly as dense as what we're allowing in this TOD area. Those people have a settlement pattern that they've gotten used to as well. We haven't done any outreach here, and I haven't heard anyone say that we should pump the brakes on this to do outreach to these mobile home park dwelling folks, nor have I heard anyone here say. And this density is very different from the density of the area that I live, although it's decently dense. It's still probably at least double the max density here, which would be 60 units an acre. I haven't heard anyone say, although there would be significant change in compatibility. I haven't heard anyone here object to this on the basis that outreach hasn't
Point
been.
of information, we had 27 charrettes with the future land use map that indicated that these areas were within the TOD, and we reached out to the community. We had uprising in the community. We discussed and debated this in 27 different meetings. So there was public outreach, and all of these, when we created the future land use maps in the past, these were vetted, and we've already had the vote and the second, and we've voted on it. So we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is new business. We already vote.
I didn't vote. I didn't vote.
You didn't vote.
So you know,
but we were in the middle. What is Robert's? You like to bring up Robert's rules all the time. What is Robert's rules for calling an agenda?
You rush to the vote. That's all I'm saying. This is a different motion.
You didn't have your hand up. You didn't have your hand up. There was no.
You rush to the vote immediately after. How much time do I get to put my hand up? You rush to the vote immedially after.
I did, because everyone was finished talking, and you have had
This
the
is a new
floor.
motion.
You
This
have
is a
had the
new
floor 80%, 90% of this meeting, sir. So it's we're not
I
rushing
could
past
honestly
anything.
care less about that. My vote is.
We all would like to talk
today.
to them. We all would
Well,
like to talk to.
Apparently, very many of you have nothing to say. You guys govern. You have nothing to say. You don't deliberate on this dais. You sit quietly.
Point
vote
of order.
no.
Point of order.
What?
Are you going to vote? We had a vote, and you didn't vote. So
My vote
are you
is
gonna vote?
nay. I think you guys get more
Motion carries.
consideration of those single-family dwelling folks in South Palm.
Motion point of order. You 27 charrettes. Done. Here we go. Yay.
Mayor, can I make one
And
quick
just so everyone knows, when I say done, I'm talking about talking. Just in case anyone had any questions about when I say the word done, it means it's not your turn to talk anymore. Just want to clarify that, just want to clarify that. Commissioner Commissioner Robinson?
Just a quick comment that the community outreach should include unincorporated citizens between these two zone changes, which I think will be very effective in them becoming part of the city.
Yeah, well, I think that, Commissioner Hardy is right about one thing. It's just timing and when you do things. If you want to send out, like, somebody was doing 100-foot addition in my neighborhood, right? And I had to get a letter that said someone's doing 100-foot addition at their house that I won't even see. So, I mean, are people notified of these changes when we do these adjustments to the maps? And these are the changes, William, if you could, you know what? I'm not even going to go there. We had a motion, we had a vote, and it's over. Let's move on to the next item. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, ordinance number 2020-07, an ordinance of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 23 Land Development Regulations by amending Article 1, General Provisions, Division 2, Definitions, Section 23.1-12, Definitions, Article 2, Site Design Qualitative Standards, Section 23.2-31, Site Design Qualitative Standards, Article 3, Zoning Districts, Division 3, District Mixed-Use Districts, Section 23.3-18, MU-W Mixed-Use West, Article 3, Zoning Districts, Division 6, Plan Development, Section 23.3-25, Plan Development Districts, Article 4, Development Standards, Section 23.4-10, Off-Street Parking, and Section 23.4-13, Administrative Uses and Conditional Uses, and Article 5, Supplemental Regulations, Division 3, Nonconformities. Section 23.5-3, Nonconformities of the City's Code of Ordinances, and providing for severability, the repeal of laws and conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Please, for the love of God, people.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you,
William?
Mayor and Commissioners. I'll ask Keith because I've lost the ability to share my PowerPoint if he'll bring it up. But it's a very long title. Thank you, Christy. It's not as involved as it would sound based on the title. As soon as it comes up, we'll go through it fairly quickly. All the items you're going to hear tonight, you've discussed at various workshops in the past, the last one being several months ago. And these have both been discussed by the advisory boards, the HRPB and the Planning and Zoning Board, and both boards recommended unanimously for this to be recommended for approval to you all. So if you'll go to the third slide, please, Keith. Here are the various things that are going to be discussed. Article 1 is involving definitions. The Article 2, administration and permits. There's a couple of things dealing with mixed-use districts and planned developments. Off-street parking is probably the largest thing being proposed here, as well as the medium and high-intensity conditional uses, and then a clarification when it comes to nonconformities. Next slide, please. So under the first article, we're clarifying definitions regarding building height, parapet, standalone retail, and vehicle fueling charging service stations. The building height definition is taking into account some changes that are coming from FEMA when it comes to flood height. The parapet definition is taking away an incentive that parapeted buildings can be taller than buildings that have regular roofs, like a gable roof, a hip roof, a standing roof. Standalone retail is having its definition broadened to include standalone retail items and businesses like a convenience store. And then vehicle fueling charging stations, we're expanding the definition of what a gas station is to encompass 5 different types of fueling. If you can go back one, please, Keith. The fueling charging. And then we're deleting convenience store from our code as it relates to a gas station. We do have a project coming forward that will be going to the Planning and Zoning Board that is a little bit limited in the terms that we don't allow a convenience store right now of more than 250 square feet, which when it's accessory to a gasoline station. We're throwing convenience store requirements in a standalone retail or commercial entity or a single destination commercial. Under administration, under permits, we're expanding some of the site design qualitative standards and deleting the standards for gasoline stations because they appear in another portion of the code and there's redundancy. Next slide. Under zoning districts, we have a little bit of a conflict between the impermeable surface limits that are in our table, as well as the written portion that's being clarified. It's a very simple change. The other one is allowing an urban plan development west of 95 to move forward. That's a clarification item as well. The off-street parking section is being completely revamped. We're going to have one parking standard for the entire city based on use classifications. We are allowing more on-street parking to count toward off-street parking in some residential areas. We have provided a mechanism to add electric vehicle charging infrastructure in parking lots, clarifying some things on the parking numbers and how we arrive at the higher intensity uses and where they would be requiring of more parking. And there's several inconsistencies within the current Article 4 that are being clarified. Next slide, please. Article 5, development standards. And it's interesting, we were talking about federal highway. One of the tools staff has to bring properties more into conformance with the code is when they have to go through an administrative use process. Right now, the administrative use process does not have a lot of performance criteria. To improve our ability to get non-conforming properties and even new ones in conformance, we are equalizing the development criteria for both administrative uses and conditional uses. Conditional uses go before an advisory board and may ultimately come to a city commission meeting. Administrative uses can be approved by staff with certain criteria. We're adding new standards for the vehicle fueling charging stations, which would include a gas station. And we're also adding significant standards when it comes to single destination retail uses, which also includes standalone retail and single destination commercial uses, because we did not have performance standards for those. And this would deal with a lot of the issues that have been raised over the years in how a convenience store performs. So we'll be taking care of that moving forward, either at the administrative level or conditional use level. The last change on nonconformities is dealing with a conflict between acts of God and losses in entirety. It's an issue that's been brought up by insurance. Before we thought we had dealt with it with some help from Nancy Stroud, and then it was brought to my attention. We had a little conflict. This clarifies that conflict and does allow nonconformities to be built back if they're lost by an act of God, such as a hurricane or a fire, but they still have to be taken into consideration how many of the land development regulations may apply, and they can be built back, taking into account as many of those inconsistencies as possible and rectifying them. So that's the summary of what's being proposed tonight with the LDRs. Aaron and I are both here to answer any questions you might have. Just that some of the other ones we talked about at our workshop, you'll be seeing in the subsequent months, probably latter part of July or early August, you'll see another series of LDR changes, including the permitted use table. So staff and the two advisory boards are all recommending that the City Commission move forward with approving this on first reading and scheduling the public hearing and second reading in 2 weeks.
Great, thank you, William, appreciate it. Who made the first and second? City Clerk?
Madam Mayor, the motion was made by Vice Mayor Amoroso and it was seconded by Commissioner Maxwell.
Okay, Commissioner Hardy? You're
Commissioner
muted.
Hardy, you're,
Muted. Oh,
We've,
Yeah.
we've discussed some of these changes before. One of which I have a major, I'm okay with everything else, but the one thing I have a major issue with is page 10 of the ordinance, lines, was that 363, 364, which talks about parking requirements. And, we've had this discussion before, but if you have a house, for example, on a 50-foot wide lot, you have 2 parking spaces right in front of your house. It's called on-street parking. You get 25 feet per car on average, right? And so if we had, for example, a 2-space requirement on a single family home, that could, it's my understanding, until these changes were, proposed, that could be filled with the 2 on-street spaces in front of your house. Am I wrong there, William?
Currently,
William?
single family homes have to have all of their parking off street. They
Off-street,
can't
okay.
count any of it. So we're inching
about
toward
a
what you
duplex?
talked about. Pardon?
What about a duplex? Let's say I
A
build
duplex would
on-
also have to have its parking off the street.
Okay, so what is this change on 363, 364? Because we had a
We're
discussion
changing
about,
what you discussed
William,
and allowing
please.
some of the on-street parking to count as the off-street parking.
so when I read this, I read properties with the single use of residential must provide on-site parking.
And if you go to later in the code, we allow the definition of on-site parking to include a space on the street.
Okay, can 100% of your parking on site, if we require, for example, 2 spaces, can you use those 2 spaces that exist in front of, a 50-foot wide lot, or the 4 spaces that would exist on a 50-foot wide lot that's on a corner for a duplex, for example? Could you count all of those? I guess what I'm saying, William, I like progressive parking policies. I don't
William?
like parking requirements. And is there a way to provide as much flexibility with the on-site parking as possible?
We
As
do allow
much-
some flexibility you're discussing in the zoning districts that are not strictly and only residential.
So in your mixed use areas, your downtown areas, your
Follow
TF
up.
areas.
Yes.
Okay. And
Follow up.
elsewhere, yes, thank you. And elsewhere, we do not allow that flexibility.
We are
William,
allowing more flexibility to count some of the on-street parking to count as the on-site parking. We're not going to go right now to full-fledged all parking requirements are met by street parking. I don't feel like that's in the best interest of the city, especially with as much complaint as we get now from all over the city about a parking problem.
Okay,
follow up.
sure. I appreciate that. I appreciate the flexibility that exists. I appreciate the additional flexibility that is being created. As you know, I routinely park a distance from, my own doorstep. I don't have that big of a deal with it. Y'all know how I feel about the environmental impacts of parking requirements and about what they do to urban form. And this is not, I don't think this is a pretty heterodoxical view. I don't think Donald Shoup is a guy whose views are outside of the mainstream in the planning profession at this point. And I wish that we went 100% in that direction. But I appreciate the additional movement or progress that's been made on this front.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Just 2 quick questions. In the impervious surface, are we considering artificial turf?
That is one of the items we're looking at to bring forward in our next round of land development regulations. Yes, sir.
How long will that take?
I mentioned earlier, we're going to try to get it to you, to the advisory boards in July, and more than likely, you'll see it either late July or in August.
Thank you. And the other question is the charging stations. Are we requiring city parking lots to have them?
If we were to build a new city parking lot or to substantially improve a current city parking lot of 25 spaces or more, we would have to add it.
Just one?
Well, it's a pro rata percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. City Clerk, do you have any public comment cards?
I do not, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're going to move on to item D.
Thank you,
Resolution-
everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, William. Thank you so much, Erin. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, resolution number XX-2020. I've never had an XX-2020, no. Authorizing issuance of non-ad valorem revenue bond series 2020A and taxable series 2020B bond to fund cash flow deficits related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
anyone have, city manager, are you planning to speak?
Madam Mayor, if there's any questions, Finance Director Bruce Miller's on the phone as well.
I know we had a long conversation about this the last time, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Any public comment cards on this, Debbie?
No, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me, Madam City Clerk. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Commissioner Hardy, I didn't get your vote.
I'm an aye.
An aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
City Attorney, did you have a report?
No, Madam Mayor, thank you.
City Manager, did you?
Just really briefly, I wanted to thank staff for the continuing hard work and dedication they're exhibiting during these difficult times. Grappling with the COVID-19, most recently the protests, and of course our wonderful annual hurricane season starting Monday. They're prepared, they're professional. It's important to remember too that while we all on this side of the equation work for the government, we're still citizens and residents and families, and feeling the effects of what's happening in all these various converging emergencies, the outrage, and dealing with the situation in Minneapolis. And it's something that in talking and working with the staff, they're grappling with these just like you are, just like our citizens are, while they're doing the good work of keeping the city moving and taking care of these other emergencies. And I just want to recognize how grateful I am, and I know that y'all are, for their service to the city. They do a great job day in and day out, and it's a privilege to lead them and to be the city manager working with them to carry out your direction on the conversation about having some kind of a special workshop. That's something I know that they'll and myself will follow your direction and be committed to doing the best job possible. And we all on this side of the organization look forward to serving and working with you and under your leadership and guidance. And they're a great group of people, the employees of the city of Lake Worth Beach, and I'm very proud of them. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all are. And just a reminder too to everyone, this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Again, we've got more testing at the Osborne Community Center. That's 1699 Wingfield Street in our south end. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Anyone?
moved.
Second?
Second.
Hello? All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Have a
Thank you,
blessed
Mayor.
evening.